Gopi Jana Pallava Girivaradari Yasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradari Yasodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Kishore Kishori ki jai, Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Marani ki jai, Gonitai ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So this morning we're reading from Canto 10, chapter 60, and the text is 47. So we can chant responsibly. Naivalikam Mahamman Ye Umanya. Vachaste Madhusudanam Ambaya Eva Hi Praya Kanyaya Syadrati Kvachit Naivalikam Mahamanye Vachaste Madhusudanam Ambaya Eva Hi Praya Kanyaya Syadrati Kvachit Naivalikam Mahamanye Vachaste Madhusudanam Ambaya Eva Hi Prayaha Kanyaya Syadrati Kvachit. Please chant. Naivalikam Mahamanye Vachaste Madhusudanam Ambaya Eva Hi Prayam Kanyaya Syadrati Kvachit. Naivalikam Mahamanye Vachaste Madhusudanam Ambaya Eva Hi Prayam Kanyaya Syadrati Kvachit. Naivalikam Mahamanye Vachaste Madhusudanam Eva Hi Prayam Kanyaya Syadrati Kvachit. And the word for text 47 is as follows. Na, not. Eva, indeed. Alikam, false. Aham, I. Manye, think. Vachaha, words. Te, your. Madhusudana, O killer of Madhu. Ambaya, of Amba. Eva he, certainly. Prayaha, generally. Kanyaya, the maiden. Syat, arose. Rati, attraction to solver. Kvachit, once. And the translation for text 47 is as follows. This is Rukmini speaking. Actually, I don't consider your words false, Madhusudana. Quite often, an unmarried girl is attracted by a man, as in the case of Amba. And the purport, the BBT purport, the disciples of Srila Prabhupada. Having refuted everything, Lord Krishna said, Srimati Rukmini, in a gracious frame of mind, now praises the truthfulness of his statements. In other words, she accepts that Lord Krishna used her as an example to elucidate ordinary female psychology. The king of Kashi had 3 daughters, Amba, Ambalika, and Ambika, and Amba was attracted to Salva. This story is narrated in the Mahabharata. Om Jnana-timirandasya Gnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurinmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Parakamlam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Ragutam Vitam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Vitamscha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bando Jagat Pate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapsa Kanchana Gorangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Suti Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Panchakalpataribhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Vacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimata Ramapada Swami Iti Namine Namaham Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimata Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Navishesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So there's a particular juncture in the conversation between Lord Krishna and Queen Rukmini. And at this particular juncture, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, who's commenting on this verse, he actually paraphrases or gives the thought process of Queen Rukmini. So this is how he puts Queen Rukmini's speaking. Or else you are teaching other men about ordinary female psychology by using me as an example, since I am a woman. So she's responding to a particular statement made earlier by Lord Krishna. And this was that statement that Lord Krishna made. Krishna had said to Rukmini, we care nothing for wives, children, and wealth. Always satisfied within ourselves, we do not work for body and home, but like a light, we merely witness. So these were Krishna's words to Rukmini, and Queen Rukmini is his wife, his principal queen. So she had, in fact, just prior to this statement, given a response to Krishna. And it was a different response, in which a response to Krishna having been or having expressed indifference regarding family life. And she herself, through the whole, because there'd been a series of statements by Lord Krishna, and Queen Rukmini had taken each statement and responded to each statement, but there was an ongoing dialogue form. So the particular statement that she's responding to of Lord Krishna is this particular one where he's saying we care nothing for wives, children, and wealth. always satisfied within ourselves. We do not work for body and home, but like a light, we merely witness. So Queen Rukmini, when she comes to her systematic response to each statement of Krishna, and this particular one, she actually comes to an internal state of calmness. And this is a transcendental emotional state. And this is given by the Acharyas, that she had come to a kind of neutral space called sthana. This is a transcendental emotion, so it's not on a regular material plane. And she's actually in the highest position emotionally of one who's practicing transcendental loving exchanges with the Lord Krishna. And this highest position of transcendental emotion is called Sthai Bhava. And to understand Sthai Bhava, one learns that all the other emotions, they get dominated by the Sthai Bhava, this transcendental space, this transcendental emotion. So in fact, the Sthai Bhava, it's all the other emotions are subservient to it. And the comparison is made by Srila Prabhupada. And this is how Srila Prabhupada explains it. The continuous ecstasy of love can remain like a powerful king, subduing all temporary manifestations of love as well as any opposing elements of anger. So this is very interesting because many of Krishna's statements were meant, he wanted to arouse anger in Queen Rukmini. But she is known for the fact that she's very steady and in a subservient mood, a conjugal mood towards Lord Krishna. So at this particular moment, when she's responding to Krishna's statement that he doesn't care for wives and children and family life, and that he's merely witnessing, she's actually in a state of calmness and neutrality. And this Sthai Bhava that she had come to, this transcendental space of love for Lord Krishna that's dominated by this calmness and neutrality, is that in fact the effect on her was that she became submerged in an ocean of humility. So there was a brief moment where just earlier on in responding to other verses, she seemed to exhibit slight anger, but now it is not that. She's actually feeling this profound humility. And in that state of continuous transcendental emotion, this ocean of humility that she's experiencing, she actually responds to Lord Krishna's statement. And her this humility comes out in this way through these words: let me have loving attachment to your feet, even if you are indifferent. Your indifference to me is appropriate, since you glance on the entire universe with indifference. Because you take pleasure within yourself, you really look at me. So she's acknowledging that Lord Krishna does take pleasure within himself. So that's how she's understanding when he's expressing that he has no regard for wives, children, family life. Because she's saying that even when he's creating the universe, still even at that time, he's looking at the universe with some indifference. That's because the pleasure is within. And but her position is, let me have loving attachment to your lotus feet, even if you are indifferent. So that's that profound humility that she has. In a regular situation, if it was not in that space of transcendental emotion in the loving relationship with Lord Krishna, and it was just on a mundane level, if one's husband were to say, I don't care for you or the children or family life, one would be a little disturbed possibly. Because one would consider, well, I'm in this situation with you, and your role is one to actually give support and care and nurturing for the entire family. But understand this is not on that mundane level. It's on a transcendental level of loving exchange with Lord Krishna. So these ideas are expressed, but then one has to take into account the inner space of each individual participating here, Lord Krishna and Queen Rukmini. And Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur sees Rukmini actually being in a very gracious frame of mind. So in fact, she starts to praise the truthfulness of Krishna's statement. So as opposed to what on a mundane level one may experience alarm, on a transcendental level, she's actually seen truthfulness in Krishna's statement. And she says, thus, I do not consider your statements that I should marry a person of similar qualities to be false. After all, in this world, sometimes a woman becomes attracted to some man before marriage, meaning somebody of similar qualities. So Rukmini is acknowledging that Krishna's statements are, they're truthful. She has to agree with them. It's not that she disagrees with them. And when she says this, it would appear that she's actually referencing one other statement of Lord Krishna's, where the fact that she's saying that indeed Lord Krishna is correct. One should marry a person of very similar qualities. And the statement of Krishna's that came earlier on that is being referenced is Krishna had said this: marriage and friendship are proper between two people who are equal in terms of their wealth, their birth, influence, physical appearance, and capacity for good progeny, but never between a superior and an inferior. So that was the statement Lord Krishna had made, and Rukmini is acknowledging this is a truthful statement. She agrees with that. And Rukmini says that indeed marriage and friendship are proper between those of equal status. She's in agreement with that statement. And I thought of in our reality, our material reality, because I mention this often, it's the only monarchy I can reference because I grew up in a country that was under British rule for some period of time. So I looked at the literature that was on dealing with when a problem arose between a prince wanting to marry somebody not of equal status. And it goes way back, but in the British monarchy, I think it was in the 1940s or so, there was King Edward VIII, or at that time he was a prince, but as he was about to ascend to the throne, he became determined to marry a divorced woman. And in fact, she was even currently married. So she'd been divorced prior, and in the present time, she was actually married. And he had set his mind, he became determined to marry her. So what would be necessary was for her to once again divorce her present husband in order to marry the soon-to-be king. So if one takes into account the religious code that persons of an equal status need to be married, equal in terms of wealth, physical appearance, capacity to produce progeny, etc., it seemed obviously a very poor choice. So this was how, and I'm referencing it, there's a book that was written entitled The Windsor Story, and I'm referencing this because it's a very interesting illustration for how the Chancellor of the Exchequer, this Lord Neville Chamberlain, spoke about what was to come up. And this is what he said: "I do hope the king pulls up his socks and behaves himself now he has such heavy responsibilities, for unless he does so, he will soon pull down the throne." So one can see that even in current, in a current setting, meaning an existing monarchy in our world in our lifetime, that particular tenet that it was necessary for persons of equal status to be wed was something that's taken very, very seriously. I mean, it's at that moment it was seen that actually he was going to cause the whole monarchical regime of that country to come crashing down were he to make that choice. So this is just to illustrate something of how even Rukmini's understanding Krishna's statement is completely accurate, and she agrees with it. So Queen Rukmini gives an example, and this is coming from the scriptures, of a woman becoming attracted to a man before marriage. So I gave a mundane example on the regular material plane. And there were 3 daughters of the king of Kashi. So this is the example Rukmini uses to agree with Krishna's statement. So there was Ambika, Ambalika, and Amba. And it was Amba who became attracted to King Shalva. So Amba was the king of Kashi's eldest daughter. And she actually got abducted at the moment of her Svayamvara and by Bhishma, because he wanted a bride for his brother. And since she had already committed herself to King Shalva, Bhishma released her, but Shalva rejected her because I think it's gone blank, because she had so-called been touched by Bhishma, another man. So she then developed an intense hatred for Bhishma, and by worshipping Lord Shiva, she claimed a boon whereby she would be able to kill Bhishma in her next life. So I'm going to read a description from the Mahabharata that describes something of this example that Queen Rukmini is using to agree with Lord Krishna's statement that persons of an equal status in terms of wealth, physical appearance, ability to produce progeny, etc., should be ones that come together, because it will illustrate something of the incredible difficulty that arose in Princess Amba's life, because this did not happen with her. So here's the description from Mahabharata, and it's a Mahabharata shortened version. In the past, I used this a great deal in my children's education, so I'm very fond of the book. So this particular Mahabharata version is by Sankirtan Das. So here's him writing: Bhishma Dev didn't know much about arranging marriages. He resorted to the easiest course for the Kshatriyas. Bhishma Dev stole into the palace of King Kashi to take away one of his lovely and eligible daughters. He heard laughter emanating from one chamber. There he found all 3 sisters, the daughters of King Kashi, together. When he entered the room, they ceased their laughter. In turn, he was flustered and confused. He didn't know which sister to choose. So, for his stepbrother, and so he took all 3. After he returned with them to Hastinapur, he saw that Amba, the eldest of the sisters, was distraught. She would not speak or eat. So here's a conversation that ensues that's recounted between Bhishmadev and Amba. So it's painting the picture of somebody who was already attracted to a particular prince, this princess, and how just by interrupting that marriage, what ensued. So, so Bhishmadev says to her, I promise you, he assured her, you'll have a comfortable and prosperous life here in the court of the Kurus. I'll see to it. And this is Amba's response. Comfort and prosperity are of no concern to me. I've already given my love to another. So Bhishmadev says to her, if it means that much, then go to him. I shall arrange a carriage for you. So he thinks, okay, she can just return to the situation where she can actually have the marriage that she was in the process of acquiring or entering into. And so then Amba quickly departed Hastinapur, eager to see her beloved Prince Shalva. And then she arrives at the palace of Prince Shalva, and this is what happens. What are you doing here? Shalva inquired, without a hint of affection. Upon seeing Shalva's stone-like countenance, Amba at that moment realized she had made a mistake. She did not anticipate this reaction from her beloved, but how could she not have known? He was always proud to a fault. So she tries to appeal to the prince, the perfect match for her. My beloved, my dearest, don't reject me. You know I love you. There is no one else. And this is how Prince Shalva responds. Bhishmadev took you from your father's house, did he not? You are now his responsibility. Let him take you. Let him take you in. Shalva turned away and never spoke a word to her again. So Amba wanted to scream at the injustice of it all. How is this happening to me? What have I done to displease the gods? For months, she and Shalva had spoken of marriage. Their future was secure. Now she felt herself adrift in a world of uncertainty. Her delicate body trembled. She struggled to regain her composure and to reassure herself. She was attractive and desirable. She thought of how Bhishmadev had learned the fine arts of etiquette from the Celestials. He's noble and just. Surely he would be open to reason and accept me. In an instant, she was back in the carriage. Drive like the wind back to Hastinapur, she instructed the driver. She, like everyone, had heard about the unshakable vow Bhishmadev had made to his father. Bhishmadev had made the vow that he was going to be celibate throughout his life. But she was confident that she could entice him with her feminine charm. After all this is what men want. So this is how she's thinking. Thus she lied to herself to keep from falling apart. So that's the narration in Mahabharata of this example that Queen Rukmini uses, where that marriage that would have been proper between two equals doesn't take place, and the psychological effect that happens on the woman who was to have participated in that marriage, and that somehow it didn't actually fall into place. So there's, and in terms of the mundane example of King Edward VIII, when he ascended to the throne, He did, in fact, go ahead with the marriage to the divorced woman. She was actually an American woman. And what he did was he decided that he would abdicate the throne because the marriage was more important to him. So that's how it worked on a mundane level. And it was a big problem he caused by abdicating the throne, because from very young he'd been groomed to take the throne. So his younger brother did not have the same training, but it was his younger brother who had to take the throne. And he had neither the expertise nor the breadth of vision that King Edward VIII had. So it was a kind of great disservice to the country and the people that, in one sense, that he put his personal attraction and desire to be married to a woman not approved according to social norms and not considered his equal in terms of status, etc., and to have gone ahead with that in his abdication. So Srila Prabhupada, he writes that Srila Narottam Das Thakur has written a song in which he represents himself as a common man, and he laments, appealing to Hari, Lord Krishna. And this is what Srila Narottam Das Thakur says: Hari Hari Bipale Parma Gonainu. I hope my computer hasn't changed the words, it may have. My dear Lord, I have uselessly spoiled my life because I have not worshipped you. So Srila Prabhupada, he tries to expand on this particular importance to look to the worship of Krishna, so one can go beyond that all this kind of problem that can arise where actually does not work perfectly, or even if it works absolutely perfect, the marriage component. This is how Srila Prabhupada explains. People do not know that they are spoiling their life. They are thinking, I've got a very nice apartment, a very nice car, a very nice wife, a very nice income, a very nice social position. All these material attractions make us forget the purpose of our life, to worship Krishna. So that's how Srila Prabhupada puts it. So he carries on. The basic principle of material attraction is sex. A man hankers after a woman, and a woman hankers after a man. And when they actually engage in sex, they become very much attracted to one another. This is Srila Prabhupada writing. So when a man and woman engage in sex, the hard knot in the heart is tied. I cannot leave you, he says. You are my life and soul. And she says, you are my life and soul. I cannot leave you. So this is going back to looking at the importance of one's internal life and the importance of that transcendental loving reciprocation with Lord Krishna. So I'm highlighting how Srila Prabhupada is graphically explaining the regular material situation and one's thought process, and particularly this bond between a man and a woman, how it actually, in a sense, ties one to the material world, so that one may forget that there's that necessity to actually develop that transcendental loving relationship with Lord Krishna and worship him. So Srila Prabhupada is actually drawing from a particular verse in Srimad Bhagavatam, from the Canto 5, the 5th chapter and the 8th verse, and this is that verse. Pumsas triya mihum bhuvams etam tayo, my computer changed the word, Viti Hudaya Grantam Du, Ato Griha Shetra Sutapta Vitar, Janasya Modayam Aham Mame, sorry. and this is a translation, the attraction between male and female is the basic principle in material existence. On the basis of this misconception, which ties the hearts of the male and female, one becomes attracted to his body, home, relatives, children, and wealth. In this way, one increases life's illusion and thinks in terms of I and mine. Close quote. So that's the verse that Srila Prabhupada is drawing from. And Krishna indicates in a very similar way that the couple should have this similar capacity to produce good offspring. So Krishna is saying there is that necessity, going much earlier on when he's speaking to Rukmini, there is that necessity for a man and a woman of equal status with this capacity to produce good progeny to actually bond together. And Rukmini's agreeing with it, but she gave an example of when it actually goes astray. And I've tried to illustrate in the contemporary situation also how it actually can be problematic. And Srila Prabhupada actually generalizes and says there is a problem that happens in all circumstances, and that is that there's a knot that gets tied in the heart, a very strong knot where one becomes overly conscious of one's own body, overly conscious of one's connection to one's spouse, and overly conscious of one's connection to one's children and one's home and one's wealth. So Krishna presents himself as being materially unqualified. So he says to Rukmini, you shouldn't worry that I'll be unhappy if you accept another man as your husband. I'm indifferent to body and home. Therefore, I just remain as witness without action. So Krishna is saying to her, well, if it's correct, if you agree or it's correct that indeed persons of equal status, a man and a woman of equal status in terms of physical beauty, wealth, etc., do come to be together, then actually I won't be unhappy if you choose another man, because actually I'm indifferent to the body and to home. That's what Krishna says to Rukmini. So the truth of the matter is that Lord Krishna doesn't have material qualities. Of course, Krishna states that he controls particular qualities in living beings, and of relevance here, he controls the senses. So this is the important part. So one understands that the senses, the way one's using one's senses, they shouldn't be used for unnecessary personal enjoyment. And they need to be restrained from unnecessary use. And one needs to restrain the mind from thinking unnecessary thoughts. For example, and this is Srila Prabhupada's example of an unnecessary thoughts. He thinks one shouldn't be using one's thinking capacity to ponder over earning money. Rather, it should be used to understand the main necessity of being a human being. So that main necessity of a human being is to actually try and establish one's transcendental connection with Lord Krishna and one's relationship with him and worship him. So that's actually how one needs to direct the mind. So this is how Srila Prabhupada explains it, that one needs to try to associate with saintly persons, with spiritual master, and those who are thinking in terms of connecting with the scriptures. So then the understanding that one will have of happiness is that happiness is equivalent to using one's senses in a way that's favorable for cultivating spiritual knowledge, because that's where happiness actually lies. And anything which causes distress is unfavorable for the cultivation of Krishna consciousness. So it generally causes distress if one's using one's senses unnecessarily. So I mean, one can really expand on this, in terms of how much one acquires. But mainly here, the focus is on how one's viewing one's spouse, how one's viewing one's wealth. It all rather needs to be seen from the correct perspective. And generally, if one is cultivating a transcendental, loving service mood to Lord Krishna, then one starts to see all of that in relation to this serving Lord Krishna. So one's performing one's activities and duties and the way one's viewing one's home, family, wife, children. It has to do with seeing them in relation to Lord Krishna. So, and it would cause distress if one's viewing it otherwise. So if one starts to think, you know, this is my home, my wife, and that may factually be true, but it's the sense of extreme possessiveness that causes the problem. So that's what causes that knot in the heart. So to open that knot, one needs to think in terms of Krishna's kindly allowed me to have this marital situation that allows me to progress in spiritual understanding. So, one shifts one's perspective. And there's a very nice, just to end, Rukmini's own Krishna consciousness is expressed in a poetic form. So there's a very nice book entitled A God Who Dances. And this is how it was put in poetic form, Queen Rukmini's position. You're pleased within yourself, so your glances really grace me, she's addressing Lord Krishna. Yet loving you will surely save and resuscitate me. Despite my arguments against all that you were saying, I'm a woman and, after all, could end up straying. So that humility is there. So these were some thoughts that explored this particular topic. If there's any question, contribution to the discussion, please feel free.
Hare Krishna. Thanks, Krishnarcana. One thing that I appreciated in one sense is this Dwarka mood, in one sense, that you have this perfect balance between the intimate relationship with Krishna, this very intimate, loving relationship, but also you have the power of understanding Krishna's position as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So you see how Srimati Rukmini Devi navigates into, this space, and to recognize Krishna's position and have that type of mood towards Krishna of submission and surrender, um, but also be perfectly assured and in place with Krishna's love and kindness and also devotion to her in one sense. So those two things are there. It's not just awe and reverence, but it's mixed with the desire that she has, all those emotions that are part of the conjugal rasa of with Lord Krishna. But it's mixed with the understanding of Krishna's position of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Different than the, Shrimati Radharani and the gopis of Vrindavan and the Vrindavan Vasis, that they just don't see Krishna as God, but you see Krishna as the most beloved, like that. So, so it's very much graphic in this pastime how this balance is there. So I was just commenting
thank
to
you
that.
very much for such a nice contribution. Of course, we were contrasting Queen Rukmini, so somebody in the royal order, and the cowherd damsels of Raja. So different occupation, different mood, different relationship, or different level of intimacy, you could say, in one sense. Because in the case of the cowherd damsel of Raja, they, as you say, have no conception of Krishna as God. But here, Rukmini does. She understands. She's is intertwined in her position of humility towards him, that actually she understands he actually creates the universe. So quite extraordinary that, as you say, she can very smoothly, in one sense, express that much broader understanding of Krishna's position, but at the same time, and in fact, even come to this point of completely agreeing with his statements. Her level of connection with Krishna is so strong that early on, it seemed that there was disturbance in the mind where he's been so dismissing of the relationship. Particularly here, we're hearing her coming to that position where even though she's responding to him saying, oh, I don't care for wives, children, home. And she actually, because of that transcendental love and her understanding of his greater position or his great position, she can actually be at peace with and actually understand and agree that yes, that is his position, and all she actually wants, and this is that great love, she actually just wants shelter of his lotus feet. So it's extremely extraordinary, and it's very fitting for somebody in the royal position. She's a queen. So to have that would one say, a kind of very proper approach is very much in keeping with her position, her social position, so to speak, even separate from her transcendentally advanced position in relation to Lord Krishna. So.
Yeah, in one sense, it's also applied to all living entities, in that regardless, no one can be equal or to Lord Krishna or superior to Lord Krishna. So the same principle applies. That, in one sense, and in the expressions of humility, she expresses, but also is showing us, giving us the understanding that how can I be in this, there's no, how you can be in a relationship of equals with Krishna. So, but the fact that it's happening is because that shows Krishna's loving disposition, that he allows that, he makes that arrangement, and he reciprocates with you. He manifests this very wonderful, attractive, supremely attractive form that attracts the love of all entities. And so he arranges for that, and he gives himself for that. So it's just Krishna's quality. And otherwise, how can any one of us have a particular relationship with Krishna that is of intimacy? Of a friend, of a conjugal, parental, like that. It's very difficult to understand. But it is there because Krishna allows it.
What is the last word? It is there.
Krishna allows it. Krishna makes, that arrangement to reciprocate.
Yes, indeed. Looking at it from a broader perspective, that there's applicability to everyone. Just seeing Queen Rukmini's relationship with Lord Krishna factually taking place, and understanding the level at which it's taking place, that there's transcendental emotion. It's not on a mundane level, and Krishna is allowing for that. He's made that arrangement, and of course, it has also to do with, in Queen Rukmini's case, she had heard about Krishna, and that's what evoked her love and had her set her sights that this was her equal, as she saw it. So for regular living entities who enter on the path of developing transcendental love for Krishna, and there's the room for the nature of the relationship. I mean, in this particular case, we're looking at a conjugal relationship. It may be, as you say, a relationship as friends or in a chivalrous mood, according to one's particular nature. But that Krishna actually allows for that relationship to be there. And it's a very extraordinary thing that one has this opportunity to elevate one's consciousness in this kind of way, and actually free oneself from any distress or suffering. Because it's such a perfect plane of existence, because one is in connection with the all-perfect Supreme Lord. So, yeah. Thank you very, very much for your very kind attention. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai.